Hey, it's Vicky, and today I am here to chat about the books I read in November. It was definitely a mixed bag. I had ratings all over the place. I also had a DNF in November. But yeah, I read 6 print books, 1 ebook, and 4 audiobooks. So let's dive in. So I started out the month by getting caught up on the Heartstopper series by Alice Oseman. I read volume 4 this month, and this one I really enjoyed. The main kind of theme and plot in this one dealt with mental illness, and I just really liked the way that it approached it in terms of it kind of showed you what it was like for the person that was that had the condition, and also, you know, someone that loves them in ways that they can support that person and stuff. So it just had really great themes about that. I really enjoyed it. I'm really sad that there's only going to be 1 more volume. It comes out next year, I believe, and I'm sad for it to end because I've really enjoyed this series. It's really good, and yeah, I gave this volume 4 stars. My next November read was one that I got from the library, and it was an anticipated release, so I was really excited to dive into it, and it was Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. And this one dealt with a young woman, I can't remember what her name was, Vera? I think her name was Vera, who basically goes back to her childhood home to care for her dying mother, and the house just had a lot of memories, baggage, everything, especially because her father was a serial killer, and and the stuff that he did happened in the house. So this one was definitely a slow burn. It took me a really long time to read, but the writing was gorgeous and totally my style. I really liked it. And it just dealt with really interesting themes. The kind of author's note at the beginning kind of says it all. Like the dedication, I should say, it just said, for anyone who's ever loved a monster, because it definitely dealt with parental relationships, the father-daughter and mother-daughter relationship. There was a lot there. And there were so many things about the book that really hit me emotionally that I wasn't really expecting. So it had like creepy, like an overall sort of creepy eeriness to it. But it was also, like I said, beautifully written. So all in all, I really enjoyed this. I know this book is kind of polarizing, and I'm glad that I was one of the people that enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next up for nonfiction November, I read Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup by John Carreyrou, and this one is about Elizabeth Holmes and her company Theranos, and basically that whole story. And this is one of those nonfiction books that really pissed me off because the story is just so infuriating that this company went on for as long as they did, and everything that they were doing was built on a gigantic lie, and it could have affected so many people in very negative ways, and it just really angered me. But I think it's nice that, you know, justice has been served, that this whole thing came out and, you know, was out in the open because of John Carreyrou's reporting as a journalist. So that always makes me go, yeah, you know, that a journalist sort of broke the story. And yeah, it was a very well-researched book. There were definitely times, though, that it felt slow because he really dives into the technology at times. And sometimes it kind of went over my head, honestly. I listened to the audiobook, and it was narrated by Will Dameron. So yeah, it was well narrated. I enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read another anticipated 2022 read. It came through on my library holds for audio, and that was Hide by Kirsten White. And unfortunately, this one I didn't have quite the experience that I did with Just Like Home. I didn't really enjoy this that much. It was about a group of people that go to this abandoned amusement park, and it's basically like a game of hide and seek, and if they win, they get some money. And this was something that I heard before I even read the book, and so I don't know if it like tainted my experience or not, but a lot of people were saying this was supposed to be an adult book, and it does not read that way whatsoever. The characters, and there are many of them, are supposed to be in their 20s, even late 20s, and to me, they read like they were in high school. And even like, I listened to the audiobook, it was narrated by Emma Galvin, and I don't have anything against her narration, but it did, the way she narrated, she sounded like a teenager. So that didn't help matters. And I don't know, I found the story to be kind of boring. The big reveal when it came, it didn't really do anything for me, and then I didn't really like the ending. So overall, this was a disappointing read. I didn't really like it. I gave it 2 stars. Then I read another audiobook. I actually have the physical copy because I wasn't sure if I was going to physically read it or listen to the audio. I ended up listening to the audio. This is House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, and the audiobook is narrated by Jeanette Illich. And this one is about a young woman named Marion, I want to say her name was Marion, who is living in like a slum area and decides to become a blood maid to this countess and moves into her elaborate, beautiful home. And yeah, is basically a blood maid, which is, you know, this woman like drinks her blood. Yeah, and that's all I'm gonna say about the plot. And I think this was a pretty good book. I mean, it has great like gothic vibes. If you like gothic stories, I thought it was a great gothic story. If you like vampire stories, this, I think, you know, I mean, vampire stories have been done so much, but I think this is kind of a different take on it in a way, and it just felt really unique to me. It did seem at times a little predictable, especially as the climax happened. It was kind of like, duh. Of course, that's what's happening, but I think it was still an enjoyable read. So I gave this 3 stars. I thought it was good, and if you're interested in it, you should check it out. The next book I read in November was one that I did for my 100 Epic Reads project, so I'm not going to go into detail here, but I read The Grapes of Wrath in November, and I vlogged the whole thing. So if you want my full thoughts on this book, you can check out that vlog. But basically, I loved this, and I gave it 5 stars. It was my favorite read of the month. It's a great classic, highly enjoy it. But if you want more deep thoughts, go check out that vlog. My next read was one that I also chose for nonfiction November, and it was kind of a different sort of nonfiction book, and that's why I picked it up. And it was The World of Lore, Wicked Mortals by Erin Menke. And I picked this up initially because I'm a fan of the podcast Lore. I just think like the way that Erin Menke like voices it and everything, the way he puts the stories together and the sort of like themes that every episode has, I just think it's really well done. And so this book, I went into it thinking like, I'm gonna enjoy this, and I totally did. It had a bunch of like little stories all about what you would expect, wicked mortals, so real people that were terrible. So he talks about like H.H. Holmes in here, he talks about the Salem witch trials, he talks about Elizabeth Bathory, who I had never heard of, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, she was like one of the most evil women in history. So it was really nice because the way I read this was every morning when I would like have my cup of coffee, I would read a story, because most of them were pretty short. And it was just, yeah, it was a nice way to kind of start my day throughout the month, and I enjoyed it. So if you are a fan of the Lore podcast, I say check this out. There's another volume, I think, that deals more with like the supernatural, spooky stuff, that I definitely want to pick up. But yeah, I enjoyed this one, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then I had my DNF for November. I DNF'd My Absolute Darling by Gabriel Talent. I made it 82 pages in, and I just decided it wasn't for me. I don't know, I wasn't connecting to it, I wasn't interested, so I DNF'd it. Not really much to say, but this was supposed to be my buzzword book for the Buzzword Reading Challenge this month, which was to read a book with ing in the title. So when I DNF'd this, I was like, oh, I have to find another one. And so I perused my shelves to see if I had any others, and I did. So I picked up Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, and this is a classic. I listened to it on audio, and it was narrated by Ruby Dee, and right off the bat I have to say that I feel like if you're going to read this book, you should do the audiobook. It really just heightened the experience, and I'll get into why in a second. First, let me tell you what it's about. So it's about a woman named Janie who is living in the South, in America. And it's basically just about her trying to find her voice and kind of who she is as a woman. And you see her go through a couple of relationships throughout the book, and they're kind of different in the ways that she sort of learns who she is as a woman, as a person, and how she can go about finding like life's happiness. And it was a quick read. It wasn't very long. It's only like 200 pages. But I would say that what really made this book for me was listening to the audiobook. Ruby Dee did a fantastic job. And the reason is because this book is very heavy in dialogue. Most of the sort of story that you're getting, you're learning by the characters having conversations. And so because there was so much dialogue, and because they speak in a dialect, that when you're reading it, it's sort of jarring when you're trying to read it on the page, but when you hear someone saying it, it just made such a difference. So for me, like I said, this was a much better experience for me because I read it on audio. So I would say if you want to read this book, if it's like one that you've been wanting to tackle or anything, definitely get the audiobook. But yeah, I think it had just really good themes, really good writing, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. My next book was another one I read for Nonfiction November. It was on my Kindle, and I read A River in Darkness by Masaji Ishikawa. It was translated from the Japanese by Martin Brown and Riza Kobayashi. And this was basically Ishikawa's memoir about escaping North Korea. He moved to North Korea. He is Japanese, but when he was, I want to say he was like 12 or 13, his family moved to North Korea. And he lived there for over 30 years before he got out. And this is one of those memoirs that is just a really tough read because I went into it not really knowing in detail what life in North Korea is like. And this book, anyway, paints a pretty horrible picture. What he lived through there is absolutely heartbreaking. And it just is so sad that he had to live that way for so many years. And yeah, so it was very eye-opening. It has made me kind of want to research the topic more because it's one of those things where like you kind of hear about things going on in North Korea and what it's like for their people. But reading a story from someone that's lived it is a whole other level. And yeah, I definitely want to dive more into this topic, but it was really well done. I think the writing was it was simple, but you felt from page 1 Ishikawa's anger, like it just burned through the pages. Like you just could feel his anger at what happened to him and his anger with the country of North Korea, and it was so effective. So yeah, I would say if you're interested, definitely pick it up. It's a quick read, but a tough one. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read a book that was sent to me for review by the author, and that book was The Existence of Amy by Lena Grace Riva. And this is about a woman named Amy who has obsessive compulsive disorder and depression. And basically the book is about her life and how those conditions affect her every day. And being someone that does not have those conditions, I can't really speak to the authenticity, though when the author sent me the book for review, she did say that she herself has had mental illness issues, and it seemed like from the reviews I read, a lot of people that do have these conditions, either or both, said that they felt the authenticity was good, but I can't really speak to it. I can, though, say that as someone kind of from the outside looking in, it really gave me perspective on what it is like to have these conditions and how it really affects so many facets of their life. And so it was very effective. The writing was fine. I didn't have any issues with the writing. The plot, it was a quick read. I got through it a lot quicker than I thought I would. And there was only one little thing that I can't really get into too much because it would be spoilery, but basically there's like a character relationship in this that it sort of took a turn and sort of came out of left field towards the end. And I don't know, it just felt weird to me. I don't know, I wasn't sure how I felt about it, but I think overall, this was a good read. I thought it was good. It gave me some perspective, which is great, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I finished out the month by reading a poetry collection because it was a goal of mine to read more poetry in 2022, so I had this collection on my shelves and I decided to read it this month, and that is Serious Concerns by Wendy Cope. And this collection was fun. I really like Wendy Cope's sarcasm and sort of her humor that she had in this collection, especially being that it's called Serious Concerns. There was definitely a lot of sarcasm and stuff in here, and I've never read her work before, but I enjoyed it. I think there were, let's see, my favorite poems in here were Defining the Problem, Loss, and 19th Christmas Poem. They were enjoyable. So yeah, overall, I would definitely read more of her work. I thought it was good, it was fun. I liked the way that she played with rhyme and just kind of played with language in general. It was a fun read, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. All right, guys, so those are the books that I read in November. Like I said, it was kind of a mixed bag. I was like all over the place. I had 2-star ratings, I had 5 stars, I had DNFs. I mean, it was just everywhere. But let me know down below what you read in November. What was your favorite book? What was your least favorite book? Let's talk about like tops and bottoms. Which one was your fave and your least fave? And if you've read any nonfiction, let me know because I'm always looking for nonfiction reads. So yeah, I hope you guys had a great month, and I will talk with you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.